So, Mr. Blair, the focus is to try and talk to young people about what is happening in Europe. Do you think convergence will ultimately work? Why would young people subjugate the interests of their own nation and their unique national cultures for the idea of a united Europe?
The truth is that with monetary union, when we had a single currency, the politics and the economics had to be put together in the right way, and they weren't. So now in the middle of a financial crisis, we're having to sort the whole thing out, which is really difficult. And so it's not that political leaders aren't trying to do their best for people, it's that it's fantastically hard. The simple reason for Europe today is not a question of subjugating the interests of your country to the interests of some great idea called Europe. The fact is it's in the individual nation's interests to come together so that their economies are stronger, we can trade more with each other, and we can wield more power and therefore bring more jobs, more opportunity, more prospects for people. It is important to realize the reason why Europe was begun by my father's generation. It was after centuries of war, the two worst world wars the globe has ever known, and out of that came an idea that was at first economic and then political. And it's an idea that's still valid today, but we've got to show how Europe coming together yields practical benefits. And at the moment, of course, with this crisis, people don't think that. On the other hand, if the crisis breaks up the single currency, you'll certainly notice a detriment, because you'll find that your living standards go down and the economic uncertainty is even worse. I think a united Europe really is about Europe coming together to do things. Part of the problem is when Europe is just a series of political discussions, it doesn't mean a lot to people. But most European countries' biggest trading partners are other European countries, so that means jobs. We could gain enormously in Europe if we had a common energy policy. Be both better for the environment, reduce cost. Things like illegal immigration, organized crime, they can only be dealt with today on a European-wide basis. Defense policy, things to do with the environment. All of these things, in the end, are better dealt with on a European-wide basis. Now, the truth is, we've made a major misstep over the way the single currency was done. So we're going to have to correct that. But underneath, the reason why Europeans are moving closer together is for reasons of history, not some political decision. For young people, there's a very simple question you've got to ask yourself. Where is the world going today? And this force of globalization that is pushing the world together, sometimes we talk about that as if it's a decision made by political leaders. It's not, it's a decision made by people. Technology's driving it. Migration's driving it. The way we live and work and art, culture, everything is pushing the world together. Now, in that world, for us as European countries, we will have more power, more influence, and more weight, economically and politically, if we stick together. United Europe's not a solution unless we take the right decisions. So economically, if we want to have a single currency in Europe, then countries have got to stand by each other in times of difficulty. And that also means that the types of reforms and changes that are going on in some of the countries with large debt, those reforms have got to continue. And those countries who are the creditor countries, they're going to have to be willing to pay in order to get us all through this. Because if the single currency busts apart, then it's going to be hugely difficult and very costly for everyone. It's really tough to make these changes, and which is why I think we've got to get growth back in the European economy as well. So I'm skeptical on the way that the austerity plans are being implemented. You need the deficit reduction, of course, you've got to get your debts down, but I think you've got to do that in a way that doesn't put growth at risk, because it's the absence of growth that makes this tough. These structural reforms, by the way, and things like the labor market and the welfare state, these are necessary anyway, frankly, for reasons of demography alone. I mean, if you think the average age of the European population 30 years ago was early 30s, today it's early 40s. So, there's a whole, technology's changing the way we live and work and think. So all of these changes mean that a certain amount of change is inevitable anyway. Supposing the single currency breaks up, well, it's very simple. What that means is for the debtor countries who go out of the Eurozone, it means a very sharp devaluation of their currency and therefore of their living standards. And then you've got to try and work your way out by reintroducing your old currency in circumstances where people think you're not going to be able to pay your debts. It's going to be pretty tough. This is a situation, there's no point in dressing this up for people, where the choices are ugly. Either way is difficult. The question is which is worse. And I think the breakup of the euro is worse. Most political leaders are not faced decisions of this importance for generations. If we have the right will, vision and courage, we can do it. But people should understand there are no easy answers to this. They're fantastically difficult. It's the hardest political challenge anyone in a position of leadership's faced for years. But there are ways through it and we've got to take them.